So first, can you just tell me about?
Well, my name is Leonard Zerlin.
Yeah, I know.
I was born December 10th, 1923. I'm going to be 100.
Yeah.
So that's already a century.
All right.
And it's a very interesting story because I've had people coming from all over. I don't feel I've done anything different except that I became interested in World War II. My grandfather's, of course, Jewish family. And he used to read to me the Jewish newspaper. And one was called the Forward, one was called the Tug, the day or the tomorrow. And I'd read with him in Yiddish. I didn't understand it, but we used to read me what's happening in Europe long before the public. So we saw something, a newsreel. I always was interested because my grandfather, we lived in the same unit. So I was well aware of what was happening in Europe. So I was always motivated. And when war was declared, December 7th, I just wanted to enlist. It took me 4 or 5 months to convince my parents. So I enlisted in the Air Force, and that rest is history. So you ask me questions, I'll fill in with everything you want to know.
So can you tell me a little bit about your life growing up in Brooklyn?
Well, it was during the Depression years.
Right.
My father was in the schmata industry. You know what schmata is in Yiddish? Old clothing. Schmata, you're wearing a schmata. The entire New York was schmata industry. And he was a dress cutter and a designer. So I got familiar with most Jewish people at that time were in the industry, clothing, buttons, everything. So we never really felt we were raised moderately, but never a lot. But it was depression. Every nickel was important for us. And we used to run for telephone calls, if you know, nobody had a telephone then. And each pharmacy had a phone booth. So as 8, 10, 12-year-old kids, we'd hang around the drugstore, the candy store. And when the girls wanted a date, they didn't have a phone. So we'd stay on the telephone booth. This was my booth. And they'd say, we want you to go to Doris Batkin at 295th Street, and we know she's a good tipper. So we'd run up the street, and if it was a good date, we'd say, well, Harry is on the phone, you better run down. They gave a penny or a nickel. If it's a nickel, it's a good date. So we got the end of the weekend, we have 5 or 15 cents. That's running for telephone calls. That's a funny story. It's just part of our youth.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So I know I've seen all the videos. When I go to New York for a while now, I'm interested in it just to see the life.
Going to New York?
Yeah, I like to go for like a vacation.
Have you ever been there before?
No, not yet.
It's very active, very noisy. I don't miss it anymore, but it's the heart of the world. You find people there that are all they live to work. California's you enjoy the life more, but New York you create.
Right.
Very creative.
Very creative.
You can't be in New York without being creative. And of course, there's a great percentage of New York is Jewish people. I mean, they might have emigrated later, but the fact that it's all industry, and there's no the Jewish was chokhmah. We don't tell stories. We live the experience. You see, not boastfully. That's who we are, the nation. That's why we survived for 5,000 years.
Right.
Under the worst of the worst circumstances. So my service experiences was much more different than most people in the Army. In fact, most of my stories are absolutely impossible to believe, and yet the problem is I photographed everything in my life. If you notice, my whole life is photographed. My entire family is here. My whole life is here. And I do photography. I study photography. But I always carried a camera. In all my missions, I carried a camera. My whole life is cameras. Never a gun. I mean, I was a gunner. But so you ask me the questions, then I'll fill in what you require.
So, we touched a little bit about the Jewish life in New York. So, could you tell me a little bit about like the communities and
Well,
what
it
was
was
like?
the Brooklyn neighborhood that I came from. Because everybody in my neighborhood, everybody was Jewish. East Flatbush, you'll find most of the comedians, all leaders of anything, came from a crucible of high, high intellect. They became comedians, musicians, doctors. All I was the lowest level. And what we would do on Shabbos night, like Friday nights,
Right.
I wasn't religious, but sometimes my whole family would go to temple. So the kids would hang out on the streets. And we would sit on the stoop. Would you know what a stoop is? It's benches outside your apartments. Called a stoop. We tell stories. And that's how story came about with most of us. One guy would say, hey, well, let's talk about we robbed the bank. Well, are you the robber? Yeah, I'm the robber. So I got my gun and I found it in a store. And then the other guy says, yeah, he says, but I know how to use a gun because I got a BB gun. And the other guy would say, so how are we going to rob this? So each one would tell a story. Well, how did we kill him? No, we didn't kill him. So tell me. So each one tells a story. For that evening with a story. And so every time there'd be another Friday night, we would continue stories. And each one of them became good writers. Like I wrote 5 books already so far. I wrote many novels. Yeah, well, I used to read. In fact, I used to sit in the mornings reading the dictionary because words have a lot of meaning to me. And I go down all the words that I couldn't understand and I try to figure out what it meant. So reading helps you understand. Reading and writing helps you. So it encourages you to be more attentive to words and things.
Very true.
So our life was pretty consistent. We weren't very kosher. The older generation were, but my folks were moderate. They didn't care whether I went to temple, but I was bar mitzvah, of course. That was essential. So I was able to read Hebrew, which I don't recall now. So you find one Jewish guy, we're all the same. You can cut it so we're all the same, full of jokes and determination. And that was the nature of who we were. And I think the Brooklyn neighborhood is a crucible of a lot of if you study American history, a lot of the major things that occurred came from this old Brooklyn area, of New York, but mainly Brooklyn or Flatbush. You might have heard the word Flatbush. But Flatbush was a crucible of a lot of during the Depression, you worked really hard to survive. And survival makes you a different person. Whether it's good or bad. Well, when you struggle, you appreciate life. So I don't think I'm any different. All my friends are gone, of course, by this time. So I'm very appreciative. And my daughter retired years ago. She was a special ed teacher. My son's a very well recognized ENT doctor, still working. So that was my accomplishment, my 2 children. So I've got 5 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. So I'm thankful that I contributed to something that'll be meaningful, because you don't find kids today that have any knowledge of anything. So all you can do is create like your son is, or be a remarkable kid. He'll be outstanding because they can see right now he's high, more than any of the kids I've seen. You can see the intellect in his face. And that's because of you coming over and creating this beautiful child. Do you have any other children?
I have one more daughter.
Okay.
Well, she's younger. Go ahead.
Oh, so you talked about it a little bit. Could you tell me about your photography passion? How you got into that, and then how it's
in my high school, I took a special course in photography. I've got 40 cameras here. And always from the day I was bar mitzvah, I got a camera and a chemistry set. So from that point on, I took pictures of my family, everything that happened. I won contests when I was in high school. Many contests. In fact, one of them, you see, this was when we went to the Bronx. It was a cloister, it was a Catholic group. We went. I took pictures of that one in the contest. You see, the nuns gave me permission with the class, so I took pictures of that. And then the little boy here won a contest. I found him in Prospect Park, sitting alone. You see, so I took pictures of the guy in the waterfront. And see, on the left. Is it that fragile?
Well, it's because I think I touched the phone in the
Oh, really?
the
Oh,
setting
oh,
when I was moving it. So
oh.
Alright, sorry about that.
Yeah, well, no, don't worry about that. So, my life it was a pleasant, though when I was very young, I was very sick. I developed what they call pleurisy in my lung. I developed, and they got me out of school for a while. And then I had to go to the Jewish hospital to operate on my back. I couldn't get rid of the pus in my lung. And at the time, this was in the early 30s, the one surgeon was a lady surgeon that would realize the only get rid of the pus in my lungs to cut open my back. And they had to cut off a rib, so I got me quite sick. I had a tube that drained, and that caused me to lose some time from school. And then that didn't heal well. So after like almost 3/4 of a year, I went back for a second operation. So, but after maybe 1 year, my teachers used to bring me stuff from the hospital. Bellevue Hospital is one of the largest in New York City, and I had moved there. So I did recuperate, and came back, and I was a runner, and I did football and baseball, so I'm fine. So why am I telling you the story? Because I'm going to get to a story later on relating to it.
Okay, sounds good. So could you tell me about your motivation for joining the military and also the Air Force in general?
Good question. Well, I do remember, since you're not part of you weren't here for the period that I'm referring to, but Edward R. Murrow was a narrator. The only way you got the news is from radio or newsreels. And newsreels, every Saturday we'd all go to the movies, and the movie told news and showed London being bombed. And you see the silhouette of people dying. And I always just said, well, why did Germany attack Poland? Well, why is this happening? And it seems that the history of people are killing each other all the time. And it always bothers me that we're letting this madman in Germany destroy Poland. So eventually we got involved with World War II. You know the story of Pearl Harbor?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, when Pearl Harbor occurred, December 7th, right? 41. I turned 18 3 days later.
Oh, December 10th, right? Yeah.
So I didn't have to ask my parents for permission. And I told my mother, Mom, I don't care what you say. I'm enlisting. This madman's killing. And Grandpa says a lot of Jewish people are not returning calls or letters. I said, something is wrong. They said, take it easy, don't get excited. I'm always aggressive, you see. So I decided, since they were fighting me, I took a special course in aviation mechanical engineering. So I spent 4 months going to New York, taking a special aeronautical engineering course, which would give me a leg up. If I enlisted, I would go in the Air Force. I didn't want to be in the infantry. And they were inducting people too, but I didn't want to wait till I'm inducted. So I was one of the early ones to enlist. So I went to enlist in the service. I was the first in my neighborhood. I'll show you the flag. My neighbor hung out the window the day I enlisted. It's still hanging in my bedroom. It's 85 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does it have all 50 stars, or is it
38? It's only 48 stars.
Wow, so that's pretty rare then.
Yeah. I took it to all my air shows. I went to every air show in California.
So, so you talked about how when your grandfather was telling you about Jewish persecution that you
We
that
didn't know
made
about we didn't know about persecution. We knew we weren't getting response.
right.
So the Jewish thing didn't occur until a little later on in the war period. We just assumed that eventually, but you can't do much for a nation that has it's a sovereign nation. You can't control the destiny of other countries.
But that kind of like hearing about like that something's going on kind of like enraged you to join.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So can you tell me about your interaction with Dr. Horowitz?
How do you know that?
In the article I read an article actually, and there was something that said something about Dr. Horowitz. I can show you online if you'd like me to. There's a few articles written about
You got to show me because I don't know if that was the name of why was that name mentioned in my article? It was an interview.
it was an article. I don't remember. It was something, and it had like a picture of you, and then it had like a story about you, and I read it, and it said something about Dr. Horowitz and how you were enlisting and stuff like that.
Oh, I'm glad I mentioned about my operation.
Right.
Because you see, I've been interviewed by many people, and many of them are young people like him, 16 to 18, with video cameras. And for years and years, I told my story going back. They put them on YouTube, and I don't care. And then all of a sudden, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was going through the story as I've done before. I said, gee, all of a sudden, I just remembered a very important part of my life that I forgot completely about. And he says, what? I said, well, when I enlisted, there was thousands of guys in Grand Central waiting to enlist. So they strip you down, they check you out, and they examine you to see whether you're fit, right? Your height, your weight, your eye. But I was a perfect nominee. I used to do weights. I was a runner. And I felt I was 5'9", weighed 135 pounds. My eyesight was normal. At 18, you have good teeth.
Yeah.
So I said, boy, this is easy for me. And they said, you like girls? I said, yeah, I like girls to make sure I wasn't. So all the things that they're looking for.
Yeah.
So, and then he checked my chest, my arm. I said, look, and all the guys are waiting in line. They're all waiting to sign the papers. So he turns me around, he checks my back. He said, what's that? You got a hole there.
Oh.
I said, oh, I completely forgot. I have more muscle, but it's when people hold me, if they hit my back, it hits my lung. But it never bothered me after 10 years, right? Because I was just eight and a half or 9. So I'm going on 18 and a half. So he says, what happened? I said, well, I had emphysema, I had this, but that was, he said, oh, I'm sorry, says the young fellow. We can't accept you. I said, what do you mean I can't accept you? I'm a great baseball player. I run a lot. I'm not going into submarines where it's going to be too much pressure. I'm going to the airport. He says, I'm sorry. You go home. Tell your mother you'll be 4F. A 4F is you're not fit for duty. They'll be very happy. You'll make $3.50 an hour. You'll make a lot of money. You'll be rich before the war's over. Next, he's pushing me out. So I started to cry. I said, you can't do that. I said, I went to school, and I said, you can't do that to me. So I said, so here's what's the most important thing in my entire life, right? Can I get a second opinion? I'm a little Jewish boy. Can I get a second opinion? He says, holy shit, he says, Dr. Horowitz, could you please get this kid off my back? So he comes in with a uniform, a stethoscope. He says, what's going on here? He says, this kid won't get off my back. So he says to me, what's the fight? I said, he doesn't want me to go in the war. He says, so why don't you go home? Your family will be very happy. So I said, well, I think that my country was bombed by the Japanese, and I think my grandfather says we're killing Jewish people. He says, oh, Let him go.
All
So you talk about making up a story. An 18-year-old kid saying to the doctor, "Can you give me somebody else that told me?" Now, that's gutsy, right?
right.
Now, had that not happened, my entire life would be totally. I mean, you can't do that because it's another dimension.
It would have been
Well,
completely a different direction.
you can't say that because if you tie your shoelace, your friend would be shot. I mean, you can't do that in life. I could have. It doesn't exist in my life. It's never what could have been or why did I do this. That's the reality we face now is the only reality we've got. And whether we know it's real, I don't know if this is real. Right? Because I don't know where one of my books is the fifth dimension, the other one was the sixth dimension. So I don't know all this because I'm here at 100. And my son tells me, he says, "How could you be 100 because you're acting like you're 50?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know. I eat sensible foods, I do normal exercise. I bike a lot, used to play tennis a lot. I had made this operation that cut me open, but I'm still functioning. I have a caretaker that comes, but she buys the food, but I don't require, I can still drive. So if something is wrong, I mean, how can a 100-year-old guy run around in a car? So is it normal? I don't know. So my story is documented in all the history books. It's not just I'm telling a story. They come up, and the stories are just impossible to believe. I say, you know what? Go to my bedroom and look at my photography. All these people I photographed, I developed it, I enlarged it, I have my own darkroom. All these pictures didn't come from a laboratory. Through one of my 20, 30 cameras, I developed it. So I'm surrounded by, this is 1/100th of all the pictures I've got. I got 50 albums all over my home. And not that I miss it, it's just I love photography. So the memory could be gone, but when I look at a picture of my children when they're first born, I say, holy mackerel, I don't believe, that's not me. It's like I just made a print of like this one. You can have a copy if you want. Well, there's a better one. They just took it me a few weeks ago. Somebody came. Or you can take this one if it's smaller.
Thank you.
Whichever you want.
That's your it's your uniform?
I'll show it to you.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That's
So-
wonderful.
So, and this was just done maybe from the Library of Congress. They took video and they took some stills. I don't make it myself. They want it. So, it's just stories.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Does that have any interest? Yeah, I'll share the stuff I've got here. So, and then this one here, I wrote a letter to the newspaper that was published just a few months ago. Because I write a lot. When I have nothing to do, I write. So time is very important to me. I don't sit around, I feed the birds, I take care of my garden. But to me, time is very precious. I don't sit and I have an argument with people I disagree with. It's their problem, it's not mine. If I disagree with you, I'm not going to try to give you my view because it serves no purpose. If I tell you what's right, that doesn't serve a purpose because they don't listen anyway. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. They ask advice, but they'll go on their own way. And my grandchildren I can guide them, but I can't tell them. But they can follow. Eisenhower was a great general, but he was a great leader. They followed him. He wasn't a Patton. Patton was a great general, but he wasn't. But Eisenhower was a pleasure. He didn't say what to do. He said, just follow me. So that's the purpose of a good parent. You create an image.
Meeting is exam.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
So, That's whether it's philosophy, I don't know. So I'd like you to ask me the question
Oh,
too.
okay.
Sure.
Could you tell me which units you were in? In
The Bob group. I'm going to give you the story. Yeah, this article will explain to you. Take that. That was in the paper. Recording. This explains about this. We went through training in Fort Dix. We have our training in the states of. We go to different training programs to find out what you're capable of doing. So the training is of no value to the interview. We go for basic training. I'll explain to you basic training. Basic training, you go from a civilian life to a new life. But the new life is you have no life. The minute you get in any service or any place in the world, you're not a civilian, you're part of an organization where you cannot do what you want to do. So they train you with all the other people from around the country to coalesce, to get together, and you march and you do things that you don't think is ordinary. You have to watch together, you got to go to the bathroom together, you got to eat together, you got to be part of a group. They wake up in the middle of the night, they get on your hands and knees and pick up cigarette butts. In the rain, they mark you. They do things that really bother you. They exhaust you. They march for 25 miles and run. So they make you physically fit. And by the time your 6 weeks of training is over, you're bonded with these people. We hate this goddamn place. I want to get rid of it. But you're bonded. So you have no more control over your life. You do something wrong, it's government. You have no rights at all. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
So when and where were you deployed for the first time?
Well, we shipped after training. We went to vigorous training. We were assigned an aircraft. From Texas to South Carolina, we ended up, and then we were shipped to England. So I went to England in 1943. See, all the other stuff is training, so it has no value to you. A lot of people washed out. A lot of people didn't like what they did. But in the Air Force, you have to be a flight group, it's only enlistment. It's volunteer. You could walk out of it, but still be in the Army. But to be in the air crew, all volunteer. Because your life is much more fragile. In fact, not fragile, it's suicidal. Air Force is suicidal. Yeah, I'm a suicidal. I'm one of the few that survived. Yeah. By no means of my own, because a lot of my friends died in the same airplane. So, what do you attribute that to? It's not by age. They're only 18, 19. My captain was 23. He's happy. He's an old man. He's 23. So I'm saying it's a different mentality, you see. So my life was dedicated on that principle of I'm so thankful to be home that there's nothing that can happen to me that can bother me. After 3.5 years of going through all the crisis of destruction, right? Destruction and getting along and living in different places. And yet when you get home, they say, you can't bother me. You can drop a bomb here and I don't even give a damn. You have a big problem, you work it out. If you want answers, yes, but I know you're not going to follow it anyway. So if you try to upset me, you're not going to upset me because I'm alive, you see. If you're sick, then I'm compassionate. That's God's will that you have a sickness. I almost died from they cut me open. I had bowel obstruction, had to cut me open. But that didn't bother me because I can't play tennis, ride my bike, but I'm still functioning. That did, it would destroy them. I'm still youthful in terms of my old, I still have memory of every aspect of my life. So I'm very
important.
fortunate. It's not that I choose it, but if I show you a picture, I can say what camera I used, what my diaphragm was, what the weather. It's for that moment. I'm there. You see. So when I put these pictures up, if I focus, I say, "Oh my God, that's me building my house up in the redwoods. Holy mackerel! How did I do that?" So I'm still saying that it's a dimension that I can't explain either. You see.
So a little bit of a backtrack to the boot camp that you were talking about.
What this?
Right. So how dangerous was that? Because I watched recently. I don't know how accurate it is, but I watched a movie called Midway. It was about the Air Force in the Pacific, and like in the boot camp, there were a lot of planes going down.
No, Midway nothing is boot camp.
Well, no, but there was like the training that they were doing, like on just like some test runs or whatever, and they were like a lot
Well,
of
that was
people.
Marines more than likely. The Marines were a different group. The Air Force had their own method of training. Each group had their own method of training. They were an assault group, they were ground group. And Midway was the beginning of 1940. Midway was another crisis period in American history where we lost a lot of airplanes. But that was another story. If there's any story about Midway, it's the turning point of the war.
Right.
But that was naval.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with it. But it represents the turning point. Well, we broke the Japanese code. So that's another story. I won't go into that.
Okay. So okay, so this is a little bit of a okay. So I'm a basketball fan. Okay, and they have this thing in the NBA where it's called "You're Welcome to the NBA Moment." You get like dunked on, or like someone like, it's like you're welcome, like it's gruesome,
Sure.
right? So what was your welcome to the military moment?
No such thing.
There was no such thing where
No
you're
such
like,
thing. It's a growth pattern. It's incremental. After it's over, then you look back and say, it was difficult, but it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
In fact, I've gone to so many schools and I've learned a lot by having the kids ask me questions, not adults. And they learn more by me talking to them as I wasn't much older than they were when I spoke to them. So I give them an experience. What was it like? And I can get into that if you choose to. But I want to get through your questions and I can get into my personal experience.
Okay, sounds good. So can you tell me about some notable missions that you had?
Every mission is notable.
Every mission. Okay. What can you tell me about one of them?
My first mission.
Okay.
We got to England in April of 1943. That was a very early part of the war. The war began in December 41. So it took a year and a half for America to arm. We had nothing. So I was assigned to a B-26. There are three methods of aircraft. One was a fighter, which is one engine, or P-30. A fighter was a smaller aircraft. It's for low-level strafing, but small bomb load. You can go into bridges to get low level. There was the Interdiction, which is my plane, which is twin engine. And then there's four engine, which is B-17 or the B-24. Three different levels. We were the moderate. And our plane was called, the word is interdiction. Interdiction means we don't go into deep areas to bomb. That's into Germany. We go in back of the infantry. As the infantry advances, we prevent them from being slaughtered. So we destroy the enemy, the trucks, the ships, the railroad yards, the airports, the airplanes, low level. We fly from 5,000 to 10,000 feet. 12,000, you need oxygen. We didn't require that. I'll show you I have an oxygen mask also. So we go interdiction, meaning if the infantry is going to go here, we go behind the enemy and make sure they don't have means of getting to the beach, like on D-Day. So I'm noted for my two missions D-Day. You know what D-Day represents?
Oh. So your first mission?
No, okay. First mission was long before D-Day.
Right.
Like a year and a half. You have to prepare years and years of D-Day. D-Day means you destroy the enemy so they don't have aircraft. So when you go on the beaches of Normandy, you know, in Normandy, make sure the Germans don't come and bomb you. But you can't land troops. You understand that? If you follow. So we were one of the first air groups in Europe landing there and setting up airfields. It's just farmland, really. Just farmland. So our first mission was in Holland. So I said to my commanding officer, why are we going to Holland? No. France was the enemy because they invaded France. And Germany's our enemy, right? So why are we going to Holland? It seems that the RAF, they were fighting for 2 years before we got it. From 1940, they've been fighting from 40, 41, 40. By 43, we became operational. But we were fighting the Germans for 2.5 years. You understand that?
Yeah, that's the English.
Yeah, don't forget when Poland was bombed, both France and England and Poland had a pact saying, if any one of you three are attacked, it's like we've been attacked. So when Poland was attacked, France and England had to protect them. So the war was, you're attacking Poland, but we have to attack you also. But France did not. It was a quiet war. So I won't go into too much complication, too complex.
Okay.
So the first mission was Holland. And the Holland mission was in May of 19. After 2 months of training, we flew 4.5 hours to Holland. And we could not find it. It's a special target that was inside a mountainside where they're building some secret something. And we came back after an exhausting flight. And you know what ACAC is? ACAC is German aircraft. ACAC is German shooting. That's when 90% of the planes are shot down. Like hand grenades. But these bombs, they're called 88s. And they shoot by the tens of, and they explode at the elevation that you're in. And they track you. 90% of the aircraft shot down are ACAC, anti-aircraft. All over Germany, all over France, all over. So the word ACAC is number one destruction of the enemy. Very powerful. Thousands of shots, and they know exactly your elevation, and they explode. And it's you know what a hand grenade is? This is 1,000 times bigger. And any piece of metal, it goes right through your plane, right through your body. It's like pellets of glass.
Mm.
So if it touches your plane, it opens it up. So ACAC is what killed you anyway. So when we flew to Holland, it wasn't a major target, right? It wasn't what we call the enemy, but they did capture Holland. They negotiated peace with Germany, so they went, but they still had their productivity, and they were building something in a mountain, and its high headquarters said, "You've got to destroy this." So our airplane was low enough to go lower, and we couldn't find the target. So we went back, to the commanding officer and said, after 8 hours of flying, we said, we can't go back there. It's very dangerous because mountains, you got turbulence, turbulence. Mm-hmm. So airplane fly over. So it came all the way from Washington and say, this target must be obliterated. You're going to go back in 3 or 4 days. Well, here's the story. You have a question about that?
Well, wouldn't the Germans have already known that you guys had tried to find them?
Sure.
So they would send you back.
Well, they knew the planes came over, but we didn't do any damage.
Right. But they'd be prepared for another.
Well, there's no real target because they were in the mountains. All you can see is tracks going into a mountain, but you can't see what's going in there, you see. And our plane was low, had enough capacity to go through the mountain range. A big bomber can't do it at 20,000 feet. And a fighter plane doesn't have the armament to drop any heavy duty armament, you see. So we were the major source of this. So the problem was, here's the problem, here's the story. I'm ambidextrous. I write righty, more delicate, but I throw lefty. My power is my left hand. And for weeks and weeks, my left arm was bothering me. In order for it to, I had to wear a flak jacket. A flak jacket, it's metal. It wasn't like Kevlar. It weighed 24 pounds and you wear it to protect you from your groin to your chest. Because if flak hits you, you're protected. Today it's Kevlar, it's light. But then it's quite heavy. Then you carry a parachute. You have two chutes, one next to you, one on your back. Because anytime you have to jump, you need a parachute. So when I came back with that one mission, my first mission, that was nerve-wracking, right? I said, oh, thank God I got, because we needed 25 missions to go home. And nobody, that was the beginning of the war. Because 25, nobody had 25. Nobody had 25. They destroyed me before. So we came back and, whoa, thank God it's over. We won. But I have a problem with my left arm. So I said to my CO, Jesus Christ, I know what I did, but it's been bothering me for weeks. I don't know what's happened to my left arm. He said, go to the medic and let them take a look at it. So I went through, had my chow, ready to go to sleep. I said, I got to check it out. So the medic rips off my shirt and he says, wow, I see a big, big lump. He says, it's a big, big lump. He says, it's a big cyst. I said, holy mackerel, I didn't know that. I thought it was my bone. So he don't ask me, he just takes a knife and slits it and pop, all the pus comes out. Then I ask you, is it okay? Can I give you an answer? Just to cut you open. And he says, squeeze it, and all of a sudden, pop. It's great. He says, holy mackerel, I could have been infected. I said, holy mackerel, what'd you do? He says, you have an infection there. Why'd you? I said, I didn't know I have an infection. I thought it was, so he says, I said, can you stitch it? He says, no, I think we can put some mercure. What? I only cried. So he puts a big pack of packing and tape. And he says, wow, that's going to take a few days to heal. So he writes down a little sign. I said, what are you writing? You're grounded for 4 days. He said, Sergeant, you tell your captain, you go and stay home, get drunk if you want to, but you're not flying anywhere. You can't put on your flight jacket. You can't put on your parachute. You can't function. It's too heavy. So I said, holy mackerel. So I tell my CO, he said, well, they're going to go back in 3 more days. I said, holy mackerel, my group is going and I can't go. Right? So, a control tower is like a control tower watching the airplanes. It's like they have in the airports. Only it's really a concrete stand. If you see pictures of the control towers where they're very stands, looks at there. So radio control. Right. So I went on the control. I see all my friends, and I'm torn apart. But so 13 planes took off, and one aborted, meaning an engine. He turned back. So I said, holy mackerel! So we figured within 4 or 5 hours we'd hear. After 7 hours, no radio contact. It ended up, none of them came back. 12 aircraft, none of them came back.
They were all shot down?
That's in the history books. They thought, and a couple of years ago, there's a big museum in New Orleans. It's called the biggest museum of World War II in New Orleans. and they were looking at all the books. So somebody said they saw my name in one of the books, and he says, "Oh," he says to the woman that showed him the, the book. He said, "Oh, Leonard Zerlin. I know him. He lives in South." She said, "No, he was part. They had me as a crew member because I was the first mission. On the manifest, they assumed I was on the second one. So they always said he's deceased. It ended up, some of them were shot down, some crashed. So out of the 12 planes, only 8 men survived. And they became prisoners of war. And we found out about a month later that our lieutenant colonel, he crashed and was made prisoner of war. So we thought the aircraft was not flyable. It's a long story. But that was my mission. So does that give you an option of where I should have been? That's only one story.
Do you have any other stories?
Every story is almost like that.
Can you tell me another one?
Yeah. When we got to England, we took over an RAF air station. And one of the RAF guys were fighting for 2 years. And they said to us, they used to give us, "Oh, you guys will never come out of this alive. We know what it's like, you Yanks. You know, you're not like us British." So they said, "Get your you know what a foxhole is?
Oh yeah.
Got to dig your foxhole." I said, we're not the infantry. We're the Air Force. You better get your trenching tool. They give you, we all have a trenching tool, like a little shovel. You better make your little hole. I said, it's a small hole. It's a grave site, right? But so I said, "What do you think? Your kids see? We don't need foxhole." He says, "Yeah, because every so often the Germans come at night, they bomb you." So our orders were outside the airport, our airstrip, to dig out foxholes. And sure enough, Hermann Göring, you ever hear the word Göring?
Oh, he was like the general, right?
He was next in line for Hitler. He ran the German Air Force, big. Right. He had the white uniform with medals, ugly, but he was the second in command. If Hitler wasn't in charge, he'd take over. And he ran the German Air Force. So they said to us before, if it's a bright moon, called Göring's moon, 2 or 3 German planes are going to wake you up because they can see what they can bomb. And they'll drop a few bombs on your airstrip or drop your APs. I said, "What's an AP? What's AP? Anti-personnel bomb." "Wow, what's that? Well, what are you making up a story?" "Well, you'll find out. You Yanks will find out." Sure enough, one guy said, "Hey, we have a red alert. You guys go to I said, "Holy mackerel, thank God we got the foxhole, because they're gonna just two German airplanes are gonna wake you up at 11 o'clock, 11:12, and they're gonna wake you so you won't get any sleep because they're not gonna do well. They don't kill a lot, but they disturb you. And the APs are like a fountain pen, a butterfly, a little rock, a flower, and if you hit it, it blow up your toe. And you would not know it." So at the beginning, I said, "Holy mackerel, it's a true story." So we'd stay in our foxhole until, and we couldn't get out because all these things were all over, and a few bombs were exploding. But we were safe, right? So then one smart guy said, "I'm taking a Jeep with like a snowplow and clearing up." So you pop, 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 and he clears up. the roadway so you could go to the latrine or so you won't blow up your toes. So they put flags like a gardener, you know. So then you can, and he said, son of a gun, they woke us up to 1:30 in the morning. My God, we're tired. Go back to your tent or go to the latrine. So it happened 2 or 3 times, right? So we got used to it. So we did the same thing to them. But one night, one of my friends, we lived in tents with 6 of us, perimeter tent. So one of the guys went to the latrine and he comes back, he said, hey, we were still ready, getting rid of our clothing. He said, you better not get your clothing. Goring's moon tonight. So we said, oh, we look outside, oh my God, it's really bright. So we waited, we figured within time, if they don't come, we're going to go to sleep. About 11 o'clock, the first sergeant comes with a tall kid. He replaces one of the guys that shot down. One of the cots were empty in my tent. So he comes in with this kid and he says, this kid just came from South Carolina, just went through training. He says, give him the cot here that Franklin didn't return. And the kid said, you Yankee boys here? And we said, who? My name is Rick. God damn, I've been to sit in the orderly room all goddamn day, and you Yankee people don't like us Southerners. I'm going to hit the sack. And he runs and takes his coat and goes down this, and he lays down this cot. And holy crap, what's your name, Rick? And he goes to sleep. So we're sitting and waiting, and all of a sudden, we hear the air raid alarm. Oh my God, they're coming. They came by, and Ray's riding to their foxhole, right? About the 4th time we've done this. So they run out, and I'm the last one out, and I see the kid lying in that cot. So I pull him. I said, hey, rebel, get the hell out your cot. We have a raid. He says, is this an initiation for me? He says, all the sounds and the noises. I said, no, we're going to be bombed. Go to your foxhole. He said, what's the foxhole? What's the foxhole? I said, they didn't tell you have to have. Shit, no, man. And he runs out half naked. So I take his coat. I'm giving him his coat. Oh. So everybody was in their foxhole. And he takes my foxhole. But everybody was there. Oh, and then by that time I felt the bombs dropping. And I couldn't get him out of my foxhole. He was 6'3". So I ran until I collapsed and I felt the concussion of the bomb. And when it was about 1 in the morning, I hit pop, and they cleaned up the debris. And I was so upset with this kid because he took my foxhole. It ended up going back to my tent. Everybody converged where I was. What happened? One of the bombs hit my foxhole and blew him up. Oh my God.
Second time.
So if you want to talk about the good Lord, right? That was the beginning. The second was my mission. That was the first one. Second one was the mission in home. So when you talk about faith, am I talking about a real event? So that's all. I mean, I'm just saying a lot of that story is part of my life.
It's very hard to take.
So when I tell the kids in school, how would you feel? I'm trying to say, can you replicate what happens to a human being when you know you're not supposed to be here and you're here? You could say I had an accident home, but when you have 2 incidences, which is only 2 of other things, very similar. You say, why am I here? And they say, I have a problem. You have a problem? You have a problem? You mean you can't resolve your marital issues? You can't drink too much. You have to drink this. I said, don't talk to me about your problem, because my philosophy is beyond. You can't touch me. You see, I'm thankful that I have a family and I can contribute to society, and I'm able to distribute my knowledge, whatever that is, to whoever wants to be part of it. I won't take all money because it's a long process. I'll show you my album, and you can. I don't know how it will benefit you by knowing this stuff, the content.
I just enjoy learning anything. But anyway, so can you tell me? Did you know how many hours you had in the air in total?
We don't count hours. We carry missions.
How many missions you?
Well, if you go to a movie, you get Prime, Amazon Prime at all.
Yeah.
Try Memphis Belle. Memphis Belle. That's his mother's name. Memphis Belle will give you the whole story of my experience. That'll tell you the whole story.
I think I've seen that movie. I don't remember it.
It's a great story. I'll tell you why. The producer escaped from, he was a Jewish guy. He went to different airfields and he went on 5 missions. He was a movie director. And he's the one that helped make this Memphis Belle film. And he saw, so what you see in the movie is actually what we experienced in the war. And that will tell you my whole life in the service.
So my next question, could you tell me everything that happened on June 6, 1944 from the D-Day, when you opened your eyes to when you went to
That'll
bed?
be the last one. That's a good question. I thought I mentioned it when you saw the film. The mayor that interviewed me we were waking at 2:30 in the morning. We knew something was going to happen. We trained our whole life for D-Day, right? But you can't win a war unless you attack France. So we were the advanced aircraft for D-Day. So we had to get up in the morning and prepare aircraft and paint the stripes on the wings and take off at 6. And we had briefing, we had to eat. The most difficult part, I should say, when I speak to kids in class, what was the most difficult thing when you get in the army? You know what's difficult? When you get up, you got to go to the bathroom with 10 other guys, open bathroom, and you got to do your duty, because you're not going to be back till 6 o'clock at night, and you better not drink coffee. So you got to eat together, bowel movement together. Otherwise, you better be careful, because you got to be alert, right? So you learn to do things with unit, but you don't complain because that's your life, right? So we awakened at 4:30. We took off at 6:30. We went to Omaha, here's a beach, 2 beaches. We strafed them, went back, got our lunch. They gave us more ammunition. Went back again at 2:30 in the afternoon. So, and that was the beginning of D-Day. Gave the troops the ability to gain. We didn't lose as many men as we figured.
You were kind of like clearing the way for the army.
So that should be.
And then, what did you do after the missions that you had? You just went back to.
Well, I was there for almost 2.5 years. went to 25 missions. Then they extended to 30 because you couldn't replace them because we were losing too many men. So by 35 missions, the war was practically over. But I made 35. In fact, some people come in today at 2 o'clock. They want to take some of my stuff from my museum and take it to their club.
So, I mean, it's a pretty, well, I don't know, but were you scared?
Well, I'll tell you the story. It's like preparing for an examination. You don't get scared when you do your work. When you get up in the morning, you do your work. You go to work. That's my work. If you lose a few guys, that's part of my work. If I had to be emotional, I couldn't do my work. If everybody was scared, there'd be no Air Force. It's suicidal. It was the worst branch of service because your life is, the minute you take off, in 15 minutes you could be dead. Right? Then you come back and you go again and you miss a guy or two. So you're living a very clean life. It's not like the infantry, but you adapt to reality. So if you internalize it, you can't function. So after it's all over, you review it. To me, it's just another life experience. The main thing is there's nothing heroic about what we've done. It's just a job we had to do. If we didn't do it, we wouldn't survive.
So you wouldn't consider yourself a hero?
There's no such thing. They gave me one of the highest awards because we had a bomb that was stuck. We dropped bombs. But that should be one of the interviews.
Yeah, I think I like you.
Well, it was a problem. You drop bombs, and you got 6 bombs, and you have cooks that open, and you drop bombs. One bomb didn't want to leave the airplane, it's hanging, and the only one to go underneath it and leave. Otherwise, we'd be dead. You can't fly with a bomb that's hanging.
Yeah.
So you went and released it?
Well, it's a long story.
Like get the screwdriver and then the welded.
That's a good story.
Yeah. So you were talking about how it was like suicidal to go in there. So, but you were like
the Air Force lost 10 times more men than any other branch of service. 10 times
more than the ground people?
Yeah. In fact, I was writing some numbers. Yeah, statistics. I don't know if I have it in this book. I was trying to tell somebody about it. The numbers were just astronomically high. Oh. This is British. Yeah, we lost a total of 73,000. British 61,000. The Canadian, this is on 21,000. Yeah, we lost a total of over 34,000 airmen. 34,000. Where the infantry might have been 5,000 total. I mean, in terms of loss rate, there's no heroes. It's just we were more subjected to being killed than any other branch.
So would you say going into the war that you were kind of like prepared to die?
I don't think that's true. You only realize it afterwards.
So now we're gonna move a little bit to after the war. What were your like post-war like thoughts, or like did you have like trauma, or you just
I never had this.
You just kept living?
woke up at night with fear, but no, World War II veterans never had post-traumatic syndrome. No. We did a job, got married, raised a family, go to school. We're the lost generation. I'm the last of the last generation. There's nobody around. So I carry on because D-Day, you're coming another time. That my other guys are coming. The D-Day story, the French people I met, I'm one of the first Americans that met the French people right after D-Day. I write with them still today. From D-Day to this day, they're my closest friend, the French town of St. Mary. It will take too many hours and I have to get prepared for that group. But you make another trip because the stories are just more than I can cover in an hour or two. They're almost like, I'll just share my museum to quick look at what I've got.
Yeah, I just got a couple more questions. So, how do you think war changed you? Like,
I think fatalistic. You find most of my generation, you don't complain. You accept life. I think you accept life, and you learn from your tragedies. But my tragedies is life and death. It's not about yes and no. I got letters of guys that have been in hospital all their half of life. So I think it just changed. Each generation changes.
you think that this generation would be able to do what you guys did?
I think every generation, I hate to diminish it. I think when times of danger, don't forget our country was in danger. The world was in danger. We're going through a similar situation around the country. Crisis brings out the best of people. So I'm not fearful of an event.
Maybe more death if anything happens these days because it's so advanced the militaries and in a matter of
Just press a button and you
yeah,
can be destroyed.
and we destroy them.
Yeah, you don't need effort. Just press a button. I don't think we should make a judgment. The youth today are not well adapted, but without any specific danger. Politically we have a problem, but that'll be resolved. Politically, we're in a bad situation, but we're doing well. We're getting rid of the poisons. But when I look at life as being thankful that we have a wonderful country. What work do you do, by the way? What?
I'm in sales, corporate sales.
With a particular company?
Yeah, we work in a company and we sell Macintosh.
Oh, how did you learn that?
I went to school here and I became a technician and I worked with computers. And then when I moved to LA, I started doing sales in corporate.
Oh, that's great. So you live now where? Woodland Hills?
We live in Woodland Hills.
Oh, it's a nice area for you. You should be
It's
right
about 10 miles from here, 10, 11 miles.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
You can make it next time, because right now I'm preparing for the other group. They're going to videotape me for 4 or 5 hours. They come with a crew, with lights and stuff. So.
Which organization is that?
It's called the Seabees. It's a group. It goes to the Congress, and they want to make sure that the period is not lost. And I'm the only one around to talk about it.
That's one of the main reasons he started doing this.
Oh yeah, I have a quick story.
Go ahead.
It was last summer, and I you know what YouTube is, right? So I was on YouTube and I found these 2 videos. One was talking about how the last Titanic survivor had died, like in the late '90s, and it was talking about how the last World War I veteran had died up around like 2011, right? So I realized, I mean, in 2011, I was 4 years old. And in the '90s, I wasn't even a thought,
Wow.
you know? So,
Wow.
so I realized that, like, well, now I can't get any more information from those. These are two big events that happen, you know? I can't.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so I think about the next important events, and I think of, World War II, the Holocaust. And so, my first interview, I interviewed a Holocaust survivor that lives in Hollywood. So when I interviewed her, and then I interviewed another Holocaust survivor, and I'm like, well, now let me move on to World War II veterans. I interviewed my first World War II veteran about like 3 weeks ago, and now you're my fourth interview. So.
Well, the Reagan Library is only 5 minutes from here. Have you gone to the museum?
Yeah, I've been there twice.
Oh.
We wanted to go when they had the.
Yeah, they had a World War II exhibit recently,
but we didn't make it there last year.
Yeah.
I guess it's gone. It's not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I've been there a few times. I was trying to donate some of my stuff, but it's wonderful that you have a son that's he's a special person, because there's very few kids of this generation that have the interest he has.
Yeah, I was very surprised too, but he's very passionate about the things he starts doing. He wants to follow it up all the way. He doesn't, like, okay, what's my thought? Let's forget about it. But he follows it up and he actually wants to do it.
Yeah, he's very deep.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful that he feels that way, because there's very few of his age that have the. I thought it was the teacher. I'd invite the teacher here if she's interested, because the teachers would be the one to talk to. But I invite you again anytime, because after the group, I have to make one more talk before my birthday at Rotary. They're going to do like a little party for me, I guess. So I sold most of my World War II books through Rotary. I published the World War II book. Yeah. So, but if you want to come again, you give me a buzz, and I'll give you a more detailed view of everything. I can go through my album.
Okay.
Because I got a lot of stuff.
I just have one final question.
Sure.
It's what I ask like everyone at the end. Let's say, for example, like there's something you could tell you could tell someone, every person you meet, you want to tell them, like, what would it be? Just your one message that you just try and get out to everyone that is able to hear you.
I'll give you a very simple one. It's something I came up with last week.
Okay.
If you carry 1 ounce of emotional baggage, will develop into 1 ton of woe. When you carry baggage, not physical baggage, you carry baggage, problem kids, finance, you carry 1 ounce of baggage, it'll evolve to 1 ton of woe. Does that make sense? You carry baggage. Everybody carries. The older you get, the more baggage. The kids, the grandkids, the numbers. Stories. You keep carrying that, and I can feel it. When are they walking? It's like an adult. We can feel it. You guys have positive energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the average person comes in, watch this, how I feel, and they go on to their life, right? They're not coming to listen. They're coming to look around. To me, every picture is my life, right? They don't hear it. They hear it. He hears it. You guys hear it. Immigrant populations, the ones that create more of America, because they're the hard workers. Americans are not workers anymore. They take more. They're not contributing. They used to. They're not hard workers. I have a workshop. I do working in my garage. I do build my own furniture. I want to contribute to my family. But you guys are special.
Thank
So when you ask me the question, when you carry negative thoughts weigh you down. So if there's something you can supplement, you supplement a problem with your teacher, your family, your girlfriend, whatever. That's baggage. So one of my grandkids said, "Well, Grandpa, what are you going to say?" I said, "You don't want to carry the book on your back that's heavy. Well, that will be 10 times greater as you get older. Just get rid of that book. Just get rid of it. Either read it or get rid of it." Because with me, I'm saying, if you talk of problems, you named the problem I've gone through it, you see. My wife died of multiple sclerosis 12 years ago. I built all her equipment. She couldn't walk for 30 years. Never bothered me. My whole house is full of winches to get it off the wheelchair, to walk. Couldn't walk. So, never bothered me because she was functioning. She was a wonderful woman. But she died young. So you talk about trouble. But I don't carry the baggage because I have to contribute to the world we live in. So maybe a little bit of him would be very beneficial.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, anytime you want to come by with him,
He's definitely come by again.
we'll spend more time when after this whole gymnastic thing. They're going to be here for 3-4 hours, and
What did you do afterwards? What was your occupation?
I was an engineer at Hughes Aircraft. I built semiconductors. I was the beginning of the integrated circuit. Long before we even had it, we just had a TO5, which is a little transistor, just a transistor. So I know this history of the tech. I don't know. I never put it together, but I was building it with wafers. So, work for youth.
Good company.
Well, I understand that you have a company coming over. So, I mean, is there anything you'd like to show me, or?
Well, I'll take you. Come take a look at my museum.
Okay.
We can close this up.
Yeah.
Wherever you go, you're going to see the cemetery. My son took that at the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Yeah.
Is that your wife?
Yeah. See about my marriage?
Yeah, that's really good.
I'm surrounded by my life here, right?
Yeah. Is that a rifle that you used one day? Or?
No, it's nothing. I don't like guns at all.
No.
I shave my museum.
Okay, go ahead, sir. You go first.
Yeah. There's our stuff.
Oh wow.
That's me.
Mm-hmm.
So all this stuff, I'm going to come back. I'll give you more details of all my stories.
This was your jacket?
Yeah.
Your uniform?
Yeah. And this is the flag that hung at the
Oh. That's beautiful. Oh, that's your book?
Yeah. It's not the book itself, but
Cover.
it's a book of pictures. When you come back, we can go through it. I think you'd be appreciative of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the medal. This is the medals.
This is basically what
Yeah,
you feel, right?
my wings. The government, French government gave me this. See, they gave me this. France. See what it says? St. Mary Queen was the invasion day. So this was given to me. It's my uniform.
Oh, that was the oxygen mask you were talking about?
Yeah. think you deserve a lot more time.
Well, no, I just appreciate anything that.
Oh, your pleasure.
Thank you very much for having us.
These are amazing.
Each one's a story.
Yeah. Is this what a B-26 looks like?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
This is the problem. All this is see, all this in here. There's pictures. A Jewish family adopted me as a Jewish family, girlfriend, German kids. That's me, Tony. All this is pictures of my story. This is the French people, Saint Mary Glee. See, all this is stories. Me being discharged. See, all this is a story.
Yeah.
I was at Dachau right after the. I went to Dachau.
Oh, the concentration.
2 weeks after. Each one's a story. No, that's only a gift from different countries.
Oh, okay.
We need more time for you.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, it's a whole.
Yeah,
There's many stories in this one.
you're a pleasure to have around.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
We appreciate it.